First of all, Rune, thanks so much for doing the interview. I really appreciate it. Rune, as everyone knows, is from Gryphon Audio. What's your title there, Rune? What's your role there?
I'm sales director for the company.
Sales director for Gryphon, so I really appreciate it. Yeah. So my first question is, what got you into high-end audio?
Oh, it's a long story, but I will try to make it rather short. It started years ago. I fell in love with music, but that was actually when I was pretty young. When I was visiting my old grandfather, he had an old turntable and some old records, and he was always playing music for me. And at that time, I really fell in love with opera music, so we were listening to a lot of Maria Callas and so on. And with my parents, we were listening to a lot of David Bowie, Jimi Hendrix, the Preamp, and so on. So music has always been a huge part of my life. When I grew up, this interest got stronger and stronger and stronger, and I was also purchasing a lot of high-end gear at that time. Then I somehow got involved with he actually became a good friend of mine, a guy in Jutland, and we were, sharing music with each other, experiences, and so on. And then later on, from that experience, he was a true high-end guy, really, really high-end guy. And I was introduced to some stuff that I've never been listening to. It was very, very neat. Years ago, then I started I decided to start my own hi-fi business. It was just a small thing on the side. I was running it together while I was being a teacher. I was a teacher for 12 years before I joined the industry. And I was running this shop on the side. I was selling loudspeakers from my shop, and I did some presentations for radio acoustics in Munich and in Las Vegas during the CES. And at that time, Mr. Reynolds, who owns Nordas Cables in Boston, he asked me if I would join him for a cup of tea one morning. Of course, I said yes, I would do that. So Mr. Reynolds, he asked me to join the team, and I was really not that prepared for it because, I was happy being a teacher, having my life in Denmark and so on. But it was also a huge opportunity to do something different before I got too old and trying something new with my life. So I called my ex-wife at that time because we had kids together. I needed to talk to her, ask her, is it okay that I will get the kids when I'm at home and you will have the kids when I'm traveling and so on, and see, go for it. So that was my first time really jumping into the audio industry full time, and that's like 10 years ago. And then I stayed with Nordas for some years. And in 2015, I joined Gryphon and stayed there for quite a while. Went away for a little year and then came back, and now I've been with Gryphon for the last 2 years. So it's nice being back where I belong.
Just out of curiosity, what kind of teacher were you?
My main subjects, they are history, social science, mathematics, and art.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah. That's awesome. You mentioned about how you eventually transitioned to Gryphon. So what drew you to Gryphon as a company? What stood out about Gryphon that drew you in?
Yeah, for me, Gryphon has always been like the top brand in high-end audio. It's just from the top shelf. It's also the whole, I wouldn't say myth, but the heritage, the story, the legacy, the fact that the company was founded by Mr. Rasmussen, which most people in the high-end audio know, maybe not in person, but definitely from his creations. And the fact that it is a Danish brand, and that I was able to come home to Denmark, spend more time at home, spend more time with my family, and also been given the possibility, to suddenly become associated with one of the finest brands on earth. Mm-hmm. I think it's similar, to a watchmaker. He wouldn't say no to Patek Philippe, or a mechanic. He wouldn't say no to Ferrari or Lamborghini or whatever. I think it's the same thing. It was the same thing that drew me to Gryphon. And because, it's a no BS company, and that's important for me. And something to be proud of. I'm very, very proud of being a part of the Gryphon family.
Well, one thing about Gryphon that is unique is that they're a company that offers complete systems, from speakers to amplifiers to DACs to cables that you can build, I believe, pretty much almost a completely 100% Gryphon system. So in doing that, what are some advantages of that approach of a complete Gryphon system? And if there's a certain sound signature that Gryphon products have, what would that sound signature be? How would you describe that?
Yeah. Let me start with your last question about the sound signature. Mm-hmm. Because we actually have a philosophy in the company that says that all our products should be as sonic as neutral or sonic neutral as possible. Mm-hmm. We don't want to create a specific house sound. Mm-hmm. So you could say it's a little bit bulky, or it's bright, or it's analytic, or whatever. We believe in the sonic neutrality. We believe in that we want to recreate what's on the CD or the record, or the actual material that we are listening to. That we don't add a lot of stuff to it, or we some components might sound a little bit slow, or they're warm, and so on, have this certain character. And I think from the very first day, we said, okay, what are we going to do? We're going to build a true dual mono, pure Class A. Mm-hmm. So you can run your system at full throttle all the time, no matter at what level you're playing. You're always running full throttle, like driving an electrical car. You have all the power available at all times. And the fact that we are believing in huge bandwidth also, and very important for us is having a huge amount of current available at all times. So for instance, if you take our big standalone DA converter, the Calliope, you are having 90,000 microfarad power capacity in a DA converter.
Right.
And I don't think that's very normal to have that. But that's some of the things that we do, that we believe in having this enormous amount of current available at all times. So we are always, we can control the drivers and the speakers, that it will respond to the signal immediately. Mm-hmm. So having a specific house sound would be wrong to say. But there is no doubt, of course, there is no such thing as being 100% sonic neutral.
Right.
Because we can also tell the difference between the different products we have in our portfolio. Does an Antileon Evo sound slightly different towards a Mephisto? Yes, it does. Mm-hmm. And what about the new Essence series? Does that sound different towards the Mephisto and so on? They do all have, a slightly different character, but we are always aiming for the same goal. Mm-hmm. Okay. That's how we do it.
I guess the other, so you mentioned about the philosophy in terms of the design of, for example, of the electronics, having lots of current. I guess is my other question is that given this attention to detail, attention to maximum performance, is there advantage or synergy with choosing all Gryphon components, like from the speakers to the cables, amps, preamps, etc.? When doing that, do you find that there's something beyond simply just the individual components when you synergize them together?
I think it would be wrong to say no, that there aren't a certain synergy, even though that we try not to believe in that synergy thing. But given the fact that all Gryphon products have been developed on a Gryphon product, that the cables have been, developed on Gryphon amplifiers, Gryphon speakers, and so on, then of course, at the end, there will be an advantage of running a system where all the components, if they are at a high enough level, being built by the same manufacturer, because we are not specialists in, for instance, doing a turntable or a streamer, because we don't do them.
Right.
So if we suddenly jump into that, we probably will have to take a few years to become very good at it, and so when we are developing a phono stage, we are using different manufacturers, turntables, cartridges, tone arms, and so on. But then we have to use several of different manufacturers, or having a reference. We have a couple of reference turntables in-house that we are using for that purpose. But it's also a matter of fact, that, for instance, if you're developing a new phono stage, that you actually know the topology that you're working with, the components, what works for you, and that comes down to our chief engineer, Mr. Tom Møller. He's just so skilled. So he when he starts a project, in terms of the electronic part of a component, he always knows which direction you want to go, and which type of components, the layout of the circuitry, and so on. But to come back to your actual question about the fact that I think products from the same manufacturer, that they match each other in a better way. Most of the time, I do think they match better. But then again, there are other manufacturers out there of speakers and so on, for instance, using our gear to develop their speakers, and they might claim that their speakers are better, or whatever. It is what it is. For us, it is a key factor that we are able to present people with a complete package, a complete solution, because everything is built with the same philosophy, same ideas.
Many of your speakers use AMT drivers, I believe air motion transformers. What was the reasoning behind choosing that as opposed to traditional like cone and dome style tweeters?
What is the actual reason? We have been using dome tweeters and so on in the past. When we went to design new speakers, and we wanted to go for even higher resolution, and I actually think it all started when we did the Pendragon system, where one part of the Pendragon system, the tweeter and mid-range tower, is long ribbons. And what we gained from that in terms of musicality and in terms of air and, stress-free music and the way that we suddenly, exploited music, I think it gave us the courage to go away from regular dome tweeters and so on. And then finding new drivers actually matching the air motion transformers in terms of speed and so on. And I think what we have, gained from using the air motion transformer in many of the latest designs of the speakers, I think for us it has been a huge advantage in terms of musicality. So that was like the main reason why we decided to change. It's all about having, also because they got, most of them, they have a huge bandwidth, and the fact that we are working with a huge bandwidth as well on all our products, it makes sense, for us to use that as well. Breakup point is very high, so I think you gain a lot from it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And in general, with your speakers compared to, there's no doubt that your speakers are priced in the premium market. So that's similar market when compared to other companies and your competitors. What makes Gryphon speakers unique? What's the design aspects of your speakers that make them stand out from other similarly premium speakers?
What makes them stand out? I don't know if we stand that much out, or we actually do things in a different way, because I don't think that our competitors, they are making poor speakers or whatever.
Right.
I actually think that some of our competitors in that range, they are very, very good. And I think they're doing a tremendous job. You will never question the quality of Wilson Audio or Rockport or some of the other big manufacturers out there. Never. But what makes our speakers stand out in terms of the way that we do it is that, we are working with the Duolun philosophy. And we have been doing that since we started building speakers 20 years ago. Always being in constant phase at all frequencies, at all levels. That is something that we've been working on since day one. And that was a collaboration between Flemming Rasmussen, the founder, and the old Danish mathematician and scientist and so on, and music lover, Mr. Sten Duolun, unfortunately passed away. He's also the guy behind the Duolun resistors and so on.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So it was a collaboration between the two of them, building speakers using the concave, so you actually have the mechanical structure of the speakers, and then getting everything into phase at all time, at all frequencies, at all levels. And that is, of course, also done in the crossover, not only in the making of the cabinet structure and the actual array of the drivers. But it's something that we have been believing in since day one, and it's something that we have been doing ever since. And I think that's a part of the success with our speakers, and why a lot of people they like the speakers and the way they sound. So that's our approach to it, and I think that what makes us stand out. And of course, the design of them. A Gryphon is a Gryphon. The design, the exterior design is always very, very important to Gryphon. It has always been like that. You have to remember that all Gryphon products, since day one, all the exterior design have been designed by Mr. Rasmussen, the founder. So even though he's retired now, he's still working with Gryphon. He's still doing all the drawings for all the current products and also the future products. So he's an important part of the history, because it is his way of seeing the world,
right,
that we are actually, bringing to life.
You mentioned about the Gryphon speaker cabinets. I'm just curious, what's the material that's used in constructing the cabinets themselves?
The cabinets, they are always multi-layers. So the cabinets themselves, they are built in MDF or HDF.
Okay.
But then we are using, on some of them, we are using also some plates made out of aluminium. We are also using some panels where we are using different materials such as carbon and so on. So it becomes like constrained layers that we are using. But the ground material for each cabinet is always made out of MDF. Okay. Also, the front baffles, a lot of people, they think, because they look like they do, they're made out of aluminium or whatever, but they are actually made out of MDF. It is just the painting that we do that makes them look like it's a metal material.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, and you also mentioned about the phase, and there's this constant phase technology. So can you just describe that a bit more? How does that improve sonic performance? What does that actually do subjectively when you listen to music through your speakers, that technology? How does it benefit the sound?
In short, what you actually want the tweeter, mid-range, and bass drivers to do is that the sound waves coming from the different drivers and tweeter and so on, you want them to hit you at the same time. You don't want to have delays.
Right.
And that's the philosophy about always, being in constant phase. So you don't have those delays. And that's also why we work with the concave and so on the array and the front baffle of the speakers. So that's a part of it.
Right. Okay. Now, one thing that's a bit controversial in audiophile circles is the use of subwoofers. Obviously a lot of audiophiles are not fans of it. Some people are. I personally do enjoy well-integrated subwoofers. What's your opinion on the use of subwoofers in general with your speakers and in your systems?
That's a very good question. Because if you take our systems, the big column systems, we used to have the old Poseidon system, the Pendragon system, and now the Coda system. It consists of 4 columns.
Right.
So you actually have 2 bass towers, which are more or less like subwoofers, but they are through DSP they are very very much integrated together with the mid-range tweeter tower. So you have the bass towers, and the bass towers, they are active in the system. So for instance, the Coda system, you have 1,000 watts Class AB Gryphon amp in the back, controlling the 8 drivers. Nothing else. The passive part of the Coda system is the mid-range tweeter towers, and people, they will normally run them with a Mephisto or a pair of Mephistos or Antileon Evos or something similar. Right. So it is actually, more or less playing, with a subwoofer. But in this way, it is integrated in a complete system where you have a passive part and an active part. And due to having the active part in a system like that, it's the same with the Trident 2 speakers that we do. It's only 1 column, but the bass drivers, they are active. So you can control the Q level of the system. You have 3 different Q settings. You have a low cut filter. You can control the bass level plus minus 12 dB and so on. So it actually becomes very easy to integrate into the specific listening room you have, or living room, or whatever. Because when you are able to adjust those parameters, it's much easier to get it right in your room. So having semi-active systems, as we are running with all our biggest speakers, it is something that we really do believe in. But definitely, I think when people are saying, "Oh, what about subwoofers for high-end audio and so on?" I would always say, "Okay, go with at least 2 subwoofers." So you play them in stereo,
Right.
one per side, and it's it's like when you have the Thor's hammer for Wilson and so on. And in many cases, if people they understand to integrate them in the right way, it can be very beneficial, no doubt. So I'm not against it, not at all.
Especially when it comes to placement as well, because oftentimes the best place for a subwoofer might not be at the point of the towers. But then, of course, as you said, if you have a semi-active system, a lot of times you might not need a subwoofer. You might get very adequate, well-integrated bass.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. So in our system, for instance, with the Dakota system, it would be a waste. It drops down to 12 hertz flat. So so it makes no sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of going, I guess, to the main point or main focus that I had are Gryphon amplifiers, right? Probably Gryphon is most well known for their very legendary integrated and power amplifiers.
Sure.
You touched on this a bit before when we were discussing that earlier about how delivering tremendous current or having current on tap is very important in the design of those amplifiers, and probably is one of the secrets of why it sounds so good. Can you give us any other kind of reasons or indicate any other kind of points as to why your amplifiers perform so well?
I think we are doing some things in a slightly different way than others, and some of that, of course, we keep to ourselves,
right?
Because it is a secret how we do it, and of course we don't want to share that with our competitors.
Sure.
But in many ways it is an old-fashioned topology. But a topology that we have refined over the years, because it all started with the little head amp and so on, where we did the first true dual mono pure class A amplifier, where you can actually put it in 2 pieces and it will still play music. And many of our products is like that. You can just take a saw, cut them apart, and they will still play music, because we believe in the maximum channel separation. So they are true balanced, they're true dual mono, and they are pure class A. And I touched the subject about having a tremendous amount of current available at all time. You can take our little Essence power amplifier that we introduced last year. In the stereo version, yes, it is only, and I say only, 50 watts, but it's pure class A in 8 ohms. But you have 220,000 microfarads per channel, and that's a lot of current.
Yeah, that's a lot.
That's a lot of current. And what you're actually listening to when you're listening to music is current converted into to music.
Right.
And when we do the mono version, it is not a bridge construction. We are working the amplifier modules in parallel. So an Essence mono set, then you will only get 5 watts more per channel. So you get 55 watts, but then you have twice the current. So you're actually running 440,000 microfarad per channel. So what you create from that is a tremendous headroom, control, speed, energy, the dynamic range that, in terms of details and so on. It just becomes tremendous when having that amount of current available at all time. Extremely short signal path is a very important parameter we are working with.
Okay.
So a very limited amount of wires inside our products, but they all, of course, sold it to the circuitry.
Now, your Antileon mono amplifiers. I was just reading some of the specs on them, and some of the specs, please correct me if I'm wrong, but some of the specs seem even better than your flagship Mephisto Solo. Like the, I think I read about the power supply filter capacitance is even higher.
Yes.
So, how do you compare and contrast these? Are the Mephistos still considered the true flagship that are the best sounding Gryphon product, or
absolutely,
is it variable? How would you describe that?
It's because that when you're running the Mephisto, it is running with a higher gain and a higher energy level, and the transistors, they're capable of running at a higher, with a higher gain than the ones that we're using in the Evo.
Okay.
So the Evo might have more current, yes, but running them at a higher level of energy than the Evo makes it a better performer. It is faster than the Antileon Evo, no doubt. But yes, the Antileon Evo does have more current. It's 670,000 microfarad for the stereo block, not per channel, but in total, and the Mephisto is 500,000. So yes, you do have more current, but the way that we run the topology makes the Mephisto more powerful. You also have more watts in the Mephisto.
Right.
The Antileon Evo, you got the 150 watts per channel, 175 in the mono version, but in the Mephisto you have 175 in the stereo and 200 in the monos. And definitely, yes, it is the flagship, no doubt.
Regarding your preamplifiers, there are some audiophiles that actually subscribe to the idea of having no preamplifier as being superior, or a passive preamplifier as being better, because they're of the belief that active preamplifiers can introduce distortion, they can unnecessarily color the sound. Now, Gryphon, of course, makes active preamplifiers, the Pandora, I believe. What's the advantage of a active preamplifier like a Pandora in the system as opposed to something either passive or having no preamplifier?
But, when you're running a power amp and you're running a signal into it, and let's say that it will be a DAC or something, so there will actually be a sort of preamp in the DAC controlling that. So what actually, the way that we see it and the way that we hear it is that the weakest part of a preamplifier very often is actually the volume control or the attenuator.
Right.
So that's something that we are spending a lot of time getting right. It is one of the most crucial parts in the preamplifier, that having the right attenuator or volume control. So we are not using traditional volume controls, because there is no doubt that a bad volume control, pot meter or whatever, can destroy the overall picture. So a phenomenal power amplifier can suddenly sound bad from a poor volume control, no doubt. So that's something that we're putting a lot of efforts into to get right, to get the absolutely lowest noise floor that we can do by making this attenuator. So that's the way we do a volume control, is that we are actually running some relays with some resistors in between to get enough steps. So, for instance, if you're using the Pandora, you are actually having 48 steps, 49 steps, but you can play through a maximum of 2 resistors. And from only playing through a maximum of 2 resistors, you have a very few components actually to distort sound or to smear the sound or to color the sound. That's how we do it. And of course, again, a freaking big power supply to run the unit as well.
Right.
Extreme bandwidth, of course, separating the actual power supply from the actual preamp. We do that with long cables in between, and we don't put the preamp under or on top of the power supply. We always separate them from each other. So keep that part away from the actual preamp to reduce distortion and noise.
Okay. And I guess with your DACs, like for example the Calliope DAC, have you ever designed systems, or have you ever seen systems where you're essentially using the preamp component or semi preamp, pseudo preamp in the DAC directly into the power amp, and find that the sound is better that way as opposed to putting like a Pandora or any kind of active preamp? Is that ever a better solution, or not really?
I have never experienced the Gryphon system performing better running it like that.
Okay.
But then again, it might be a subjective way of seeing things or listening to things.
Right.
And some people, they think that their super DAC or whatever that they're using as a preamp directly into, for instance, the Mephistos, that it sounds better, that it performs better in their system with their cables, with their speakers, and so on. And then comes the synergy into the picture, or your preferable choices and what you like as a person, because what you like as a person might not actually be the truth, in terms of high fidelity.
Right. Okay. Speaking about the Calliope DAC, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that wrong, but the design I noticed is a dual mono design with the Sabre chips. I believe the 9018 chips.
Yeah.
And so it's, I guess, a form of dual mono Delta Sigma DAC, as opposed to some companies that use R2R technology. Obviously, some companies use DS technology, some use R2R. What was the thought process behind using that approach in terms of getting the sound that you want, and the advantage of using that kind of design?
That's a hard question. You have to remember that the Calliope goes back to, I think, 2013. So it is actually an old timer in terms of DA converters. At that time, when we chose the Sabre DAC chips, we believed in that they were the best sounding at that time, and also it gave us the possibility to the layout that we are doing, because they are asynchronous working, that when you put in the signal is actually chopped up into minor pieces and gathered again, because they're running asynchronous.
Right.
And then having multiple DAC chips in each stack, so you can program all of them. And that has been an important factor for us, being able to do that. Adding the different filters, you can have different roll-off curves and so on. Again, at that time, we believed in that the Sabre DAC chips, at that time, they were the best sounding. Now we are using a different Sabre for the Ethos DAC, and then running 8 individual DAC chips in each stack per side, fully programmable, fully asynchronous. So actually adding, for instance, an external clock or whatever to the Calliope, it makes no sense, because it will not work. It will not make a difference because it's asynchronous. I see. The way we do it, and of course, building a DA converter It's with the same purpose as any other manufacturer, that you want to play as analog as possible. You want to get so close to the actual recording as possible. And even though that the Calliope might seem old in terms of digital technology, I do still think it's one of the best sounding DEA converters out there in the market. There might be better DA converters due to new technology and so on, much higher price point and so on. But it, in terms of sheer musicality, it's still a world class performer, I think. Does it have all the features that you see in all the new DACs? No, it doesn't. It doesn't do DSD and so on. But it's still, it upsamples to the 384 PCM, 32-bit, and in many ways it's still more than enough. And then of course a massive power supply to support it. So for us, and also it's still true dual mono, pure Class A, like our amplifiers. So we are using the same type of topology, and that we are using in our amplifiers for building the DAC.
Okay. Rune, what current or new audio technologies, whether they're coming from Gryphon or in general in high fidelity, excite you? Is there anything that's on the horizon that you're really focused on or is in your mind?
That's a good question. It's a very good question, Ricky. Let me think. I'm even though that we don't build streamers, I'm still very focused on that part. Due to the fact that we all know that it is the future, and it will, getting more and more attention in the future. So of course I'm looking in that direction, but on the same time I'm not saying that we are going to build streamers, because we have zero plans doing that for now. We are a pretty conservative company, Ricky, and we stick to what we do best. Building amplifiers, phenomenal phono stages and DA converters and CD players and great speakers and cables and those type of things that we have been doing since the very beginning. And saying that we suddenly should become world champion building turntables or streamers, that would be a little bit vain, saying that. And I trust that sticking to what you know that you are good at, what have made your company extremely successful, and sticking to that thin red line, keeping your nose in the track, and just improving on those parameters, always trying to and striving to become better, do better amplifiers, do better CD players, and so on. I think that's a lot of motivation for us, and I still think that we can, gain something. I still think that we can improve on stuff. I don't think that we have reached the limit for performance. So of course that's where we are very focused at, and probably not looking in directions like turntables and streaming for the moment. Definitely not.
Rune, I really appreciate your time. I just wanted to ask one extra question, if I may, because you gave me an idea. You mentioned about cables. So cables are obviously something that sometimes is controversial in the audiophile circles.
Yes.
Some people believe cables can make a huge difference. Some people think it makes almost no difference. First of all, what's your opinion in general about cables? And what is it that about Gryphon cables, specifically speaker cables, interconnects, whatever it is, what is it that's important in cable design that makes it worthwhile to spend a lot of money on cables to enhance the sound of a system?
Yeah, I know it's very controversial, and it has always been like that. It has always been very controversial because some of the cables out there, they're extremely expensive. And I don't say that we don't make expensive cables, but it was actually some of the first products we ever manufactured, not even before Gryphon was founded as Gryphon, when it was running, when Mr. Rasmussen was running his distribution company called 2R Marketing. He designed some special connectors. He was importing Ölbach cables from Germany, and he was using those connectors. I even think that Ölbach in Germany, they were using his special connectors for it. And Mr. Rasmussen saw the idea of sourcing single crystal copper out from Japan, and he was actually the first person outside Japan sourcing that type of conductor material for cables, and experimenting a lot with different materials, different types of insulation, geometry, and so on. That has always been a huge part of the Gryphon brand. Looking into that, we have just never, really market and being strong on marketing in terms of the cables. It has just been a natural extension of the brand. That people, of course, when they're buying a Gryphon amplifier, they're buying a Gryphon cables, of course, to go with it because it's been developed on a Gryphon. So it's been a natural thing. But yes, we do believe in cables, absolutely, and we do believe in finding the right geometry in terms of the right materials that we are using for speaker cables, for interconnects and power cords and so on. And in many ways, we trust that the metallurgy is also very important in terms of the overall performance of the cable. We don't believe in the cable to become an accessory or something to tweak your system with. So again, when designing Gryphon cables, the main goal is to maintain the sonic neutrality of the product. So, the old saying, the best cable is no cable, and so on. It's a cliche, but definitely it's something, it's the truth, because a cable is a filter, and you actually want to have less filtration as possible. We don't want to add any coloration to it. So suddenly if you say, okay, it sounds better with that copper cable, or now it's a bit too dark, or it's a bit too slow, we're going to add some silver here and there and so on. So all our cables, we're trying to maintain the same type of metallurgy, so they also fit all our components. So we don't actually sitting there listening to cables, but we're actually listening to the music and what the system is capable of doing. So definitely, we do believe in cables, and it's a very, very important part of the Gryphon company, no doubt, and it becomes even more and more important for us. Also, because we are paying more attention to it, we're putting more energy, work, money into developing new stuff.
Rune, what do you enjoy most about working as a Gryphon ambassador?
I would say there are many things, actually, that makes me happy. First of all, the fact, not now when we have the COVID, but normally, I get to travel the world. I get to meet a lot of different people sharing the same interest as me, music, hi-fi, but also getting to meet people who are willing to share, their ideas or cultural differences or whatever, and being able to work for a company like Gryphon, where you can say, I think this is top shelf, this is state of the art, this is probably the highest you can reach in our industry. It makes me extremely proud. And it's also being able to continue the work that our founder, Mr. Rasmussen, gave us when he decided to retire. Looking after this very, very special company. I think we have a huge responsibility in terms of subcontractors, in terms of suppliers, business partners. Many of our distributors we've been working with for plus 30 years. So it has developed to a lot more than just a business relationship. It is a friendship. It is people, I love seeing them because they are my friends. They're not just someone that you work with. And I think that's a very, very important factor. I think I feel the same as like I said in the beginning when we talked about the mechanics or the engineer working with Lamborghini or something, that he takes a lot of pride in it. And so do I. For me, Gryphon is a lot more than just a work. It's definitely a lifestyle. It's living the company, living the Gryphon way, and I get to interact with a lot of interesting people and very kind and loving and sharing people around the world. Also on the social medias, which I think is a brilliant way of, staying in contact and sharing knowledge, ideas, whatever people they are sharing. So I think that being a part of the Gryphon is also being a part of a special community, because it's not just a regular hi-fi client or user or whatever. I think that a lot of Gryphon users, they are also fans, and they are fan of the brand. They love the brand, they have the carpet or they're wearing a shirt or whatever. So that's also a huge part of it,
What music do you personally enjoy listening to?
I have a very, very wide scale of music that I'm listening to. I'm very, very fond of David Bowie, and may he rest in peace. I listen to a lot of classical music. I really love classical music. I've been doing that for many, many years. Opera is an important part of my life. I do love, heavy rock music from time to time. Electronical music, I fancy that a lot. I think it's interesting. And I think the way that music evolves all the time, that with all the possibilities of computers and stuff like that, it gives you a lot of new genres to enjoy. So I think it's about having an open mind, because there are so much great music out there, that just needs to be enjoyed. But some of my favorite Prince, he was a huge part of my life for many, many years in terms of music, of course. Yeah. A lot of the old guys, yes, definitely. but and then I've been following a band like Depeche Mode for my entire life. So it's definitely a very wide range or repertoire of music that I enjoy. Absolutely.
Excellent. Well, Rune, I really appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
I look forward to our community. It's called Sonic Visions. To listen to this and give us their feedback, and discuss Gryphon products more and more. And hopefully we'll have a future conversation about Gryphon as things evolve. And thanks again. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure, Rick. My pleasure. It was a huge joy being a part of, and I wish you all the best. And enjoy 2021. Hopefully, it will be a lot safer and healthier for all of you out there. And once again, thank you for letting me be a part of this.
Absolutely, and hopefully we'll be able to, once the virus goes away, we can get back to auditioning and shows and all those kinds of things.
That would be very nice.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you, Rune.
Care.
Take care.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.